This video will give you an explanation about how Excel solves the numbers in all of these cells. Now, you may already notice that if you input formula one by one, like one row by one row, Excel will not show you the right number every time you input the formula. This is because some numbers here will require Excel to solve different formulas simultaneously. Now, this video will give you a demonstration and how does everything work here. So let me just first highlight every row that does not depend on the formula and the number of other rows. So those are the rows directly related to sales, like the sales here. So it's directly related to, so here, this is directly related to previous sales level and the sales growth, which is here, this 10%. So I'm going to highlight all of those related row, and this is sales and cost of goods sold, current asset, current liability, and also net fixed asset. And basically this will cover here, these 4 parameters related to all the following, and also this one, this 5 parameter related to all the following sales, and they are directly related to the parameter here. And if you input the formula here and here, you'll get this number directly and these numbers directly. So, okay, so we'll treat all these cells highlighted here as no cells. So these are no variables. So therefore, we want Excel to solve for here, x1, x2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And I'm using X to represent these variables under income statement. Now for balance sheet, so I'm using Y here to represent items under assets. So I have Y1, and here Y2, Y3. I'm using Y to represent the sum of all these assets. And then for liability and equity, we can use Z. So Z1, Z2, Z3, and Z here represents the sum of 1, 2, 3, and also the row 35 here. Now here, Z will be Z1 plus Z2 plus Z3 plus row 35. And Y here will be equals to Y1 plus row 28 plus row 32. Okay, and then I can start from X1. So X1's formula, I'm just copying everything here. So showing here, so B8 will be some parameter, that is 10% here, times B36 and C36. So B36 is the step level. So it's C1 plus C1 T minus 1 divided by 2. Now we are treating all the -1 variables as no variables as well. So Z minus 1 is here. This number here, we treat it as no variable. And then going to X2. So B9, so 8% for the interest on cash, times B27. B27 is this Y here, plus Y1 T minus 1 divided by 2. In X3, depreciation is minus B7, the depreciation rate, 10%, times average level of fixed asset at cost. So here, Y2 plus Y2 minus 1 divided by 2. And X4 will be equals to the sum from sales and all the way up to depreciation. So it will be X1 plus X2 plus X3 plus row 15 plus row 16. Now I'm using row here. It's actually inside this column, row 15. So you're not taking the sum of the previous cells here. So we're just using C15 here. And then moving to X5. X5 is taxes. So we just need to use the tax rate times X4, the profit before tax. And then X6, profit after tax. So let's add a minus sign here. That will be profit before tax plus X5. X5 is a negative value, representing the tax payment. So X7 here is how much dividend we want to pay based on the profit after tax. So we have a dividend payout ratio, which is 40%. So times X6. So pay out 40% of the profit. And finally, therefore, the retained earning will be X6 plus X7. Okay, so that's for the income statement part. For balance sheet, we start from cash. So cash here, since cash here is the plug, I will explain it later how to show you that the idea of plug. So X1 here, first of all, equals to C39. C39 will be Z. Okay, Z here, minus C28. So that's row 28 and row 32. Now, since 28 and 22, these are sales-related items, so this value will be known directly if we apply the parameter. So Excel wouldn't have problem of solving them directly according to the formula. So I'm using row 28 and row 32. I'm not putting X, Y, or Z to represent these numbers. Now we can move on to X2. X2 equals to C32 minus C31. So C32, 32 here is the row. So row 32 minus depreciation, Y3. In here, for depreciation, it equals to B31, the previous level, so Y3, T minus 1. Here, this depreciation is accumulated depreciation. So it will include the previous level of the depreciation. And the depreciation here will be the annual depreciation. So this 117 here, it represents the depreciation that will be taken out from the sales during this year. So only this year's depreciation, while this 417 here represents the depreciation of this year and also including all the previous year's depreciation. So it's accumulated depreciation. So using accumulated depreciation plus this year's depreciation, so that will be X3, so C19, so it will be X3. And going to the debt, that will be just equals to 320. Here, 450 for stock. Now here, that according to the assumption of this model, that will stay at the same level. And stock here, the equity will also stay at the same level. But for just this model, if later on you assume that the firm will change its debt level every year according to some growth rate, now this will be changed. So it will not be equals to 320 anymore. Now going to accumulated retained earnings, we need to use B38, the previous level's earnings. So Z3, T minus 1, plus the retained earning from this year. So some item here from the income statement. So that would be X8. Okay. So let me just name this. This is equation 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, and then let me try to write it down here. So first, variables in T minus 1 are null. I'm saying the variable here, the variable here, this all T minus 1 variables, they are null. And variables related to sales are calculated already. So the next step will be, we're using 1 to 16 to solve for X1 to X8, Y1 to Y3, and the Y, Z1 to Z3, and the Z. So we have 16 equations. And also 16 variables. So we can definitely get the value for x1 to x8, y1 to y3, y, x, z1 to z3, and z. Now let's just try to figure out which one are in the same system. So let's first look at x1. So for calculating x1, we'll need z1. So for x1, we'll need z1. So let's go to z1. Okay, so z1 is 320. We will definitely get the value for x1 if you have already input z1 here. So 1 and 13, solve for x1 and z1. So the next one, let's just look at x2. So x2 will need the value for y1, and y1 is here. So for y1, we'll need the value for z. So let's go to z. To get the value for z, we'll need z1, z2, z3, which is z1, z2, z3. z1 and z2, they are fixed here, so we don't need to worry about that. For z3, we need z3 t minus 1. These are no. And we also need x8. So x8 is some items in the income statement here. So to solve for x8, we need 6 and 7. So x7 is here. To get x7, we need x6. To get x6, we need 4 and 5. To get 5, we need x4. To get x4, we need x1, x2, x3. So I'll just leave x3 here because our next set will be x3. So x3 will need y2, and y2 is here. You need y3 is here, and you need x3. So now I can summarize here. So to solve, so using equation 3, 10, and 11, we can solve for x3, y2, and y3. And then, now that we have x1 and x2, so if you're using equation, the next set of equation, we can solve for all other variables. So if you're using 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, not those. So 9, 13, 14, 15, 16, solve for x2, x4, 5, 6, 7, 8, Z1. Z1 doesn't need to solve, it will be solved here. Z2, Z3, and Z. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 9 variables here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 11 equations. So it will be solved. We can have some confidence here. And finally, I'm missing one variable. So in this system, we will also be able to solve for y1 since I mark it here. It's in this purple color, so it's in the system here. So I'm putting y1 at the end because as you may already know, so y1 here is our plug. So now the numbers are all here. Why would this plug work? Now you may know already that plug will make the balance sheet balance. So we have balance sheet here. So total assets, 1156 for year 1, equals to total liability and equity, 1156. To make these two equals, there's a trick here that is using this plug. So now plug here equals to cash, right? Now y would y equals to z. So y here is the total assets. So y here is the total asset. I'm using y to represent this variable here. And z here is the total liability and equity, right? Y always equals to z. This is because we have the plug here. Now, if you take equation 9 plus equation 12, okay, add these two equations together. So the left-hand side variable will be y1 plus y. And the right-hand side variable will be z minus row 28 minus row 22 plus y1 plus row 28 plus row 32. So this is essentially I'm using equation 9 plus equation 12. So then you're going to see that row 28 is cancel, row 32 cancel, it leaves z plus y1 equals to y plus y. And this one cancel, so finally we have y equals to z. So in the system here, where we have 9 and 12, so as long as we can make sure that y here is equals to this formula, which we have z from all the way down here, then we can make sure that this y will equals to the z. So therefore, the next thing is some of my suggestion.
Now here is the procedure that I recommend. So I will recommend you to go ahead and find all the cells related to the input parameter that is related to sales directly. So it's sales related, this growth is sales related, current asset is also a function of sales, current liability a function of sales, net fixed asset a function of sales, cost of goods a function of sales. So therefore, Excel can calculate these numbers directly by just using one formula. So the formula here. And then we also have assumption for debt. So debt will maintain the same level. And stock will also maintain the same level. So these are the numbers that will not be affected by the calculation of other sales. Then we can go ahead and start input the formula for all other sales. So I'll just go ahead and start for calculating items under income statement. Okay, I'm checking the formula here. So just be careful. So some of those items are negative. So for example, by default, cost of goods should be negative here. Interest payment should be negative. It's something you pay for the debt holders. So this should be negative. Here, depreciation should be negative. It is treated as an expense. Taxes, it's a payment. It's also negative. Dividend, it's your payout for the shareholders. It should also be negative. And finally, retained earning will be just the sum. And tax profit after tax is also the sum. Profit before tax is also the sum, because we are putting minus sign here at the stage when we calculate individual numbers. Then let me go to the balance sheet here. Now I also recommend you to go ahead and find a plug as well. So the plug here will be this cash. Okay, good. And it is not showing the correct answer now because as we demonstrated previously, it will need the numbers from other sales. Okay, so then we will have this total liability and equity equals to 1156, and that is the sum of the previous items under liability and equity. So we just need one last cell here, which is total assets. And we're going to see, since it's the balance sheet, we're going to see if total assets equals to total liability and equity. And it will equals to total liability and equity because this plug here. Okay, and we show that why it is the case. And here it equals to the sum of cash, current asset, and net fixed asset. Okay, good. So just again, let me just check all this formula, and it seems pretty good. So I can just go ahead and drag all the way to the 5th year. And show the formula again. And we can complete this part.